to episode number 2, Digital Brain Rot. We're going to be discussing a few things today, such as digital Tourette's, as well as practical changes that can be made to improve digital life and how to get your cell phone under control. Let's start with the main focus today. Digital Tourette's. Tourette's disease have been described for years, of course. Most people have heard that term or the label. Typically, it starts relatively young, and typically it occurs in men or young boys, and then it progresses over time. During COVID-19, significant number of people start to use more and more digital media and things like that. What neurologists, which is the nerve doctors, have found is that when people were doing this later after COVID, a large number of people across the globe start to see neurologists with symptoms of, for all standard purposes, of Tourette syndrome. So Tourette syndrome during COVID and after COVID presented a significantly large number of people. The difference about this Tourette syndrome presentation is what it started suddenly. It started in women, which typically it's in men, and it started older. So when the scientists went back and they looked around to see what are predisposing factors to this new condition, turned out it was significant use in TikTok as well as other social media apps. So they were very interested to understand what could be causing it. Is this real? Is it not real? So the term that was developed was functional Tourette's. Functional Tourette's, typically when I was in medical school, was that people are faking it or it's not real. So what we are finding now is that functional diseases, meaning there is no real good, easy explanation for what's happening, people are making it up or they have volitional control of that. That is not really true. The latest information using functional MRI, functional MRI is a very specific tool that is designed to identify specifically which part of the brain are active during various activities. I had a patient that had functional seizures, functional in quotes. Functional in this sense means it's not real. So this particular patient was 32 years old. She had multiple seizures and she kept falling over from those seizures. Patient went to the hospital and multiple EEGs were done, which is basically checks brain activity, and they found no seizure activity. After 2 years of treatment, this patient was giving the advice that start wearing a helmet so you don't break your head and go home. The reason I got to meet this patient, and she also had PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I did an injection called stellate ganglion block, which is an injection in the neck. It took away her post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, but her seizure stopped. She was excited about it, and I started researching this. Turns out functional MRI, or part of the brain, has been showing that part of her brain was malfunctioning during the seizure. The question is, how could that happen? Turns out various parts of the brain can talk to each other in alternative methods or alternative ways and create different things, such as seizures in this patient, which involve motor cortex or other parts of the brain. In this particular case of digital Tourette's, it seems that repeated exposure to Tourette's-like behavior, which is twitches, screaming or expletives, all of those enhance in Tourette's. Some of the hosts of social media that has been followed seems to have that. And what the neurological scientists have figured out is that when a person who does not have Tourette's is exposed to that video and audio information from watching people who are doing that on a screen continuously or a lot of times, an algorithm feeds this type of people behavior from other creators. It turns out if one sees that enough times, they start to display those type of symptoms, which is really weird in many ways. Turns out you can actually program your brain to behave like that. And then it looks like Tourette syndrome in other people. It's functional in the sense that there is no brain lesion that's identified, but there is evidence that this does happen in seizures, for example. I do not believe there is functional MRI evidence yet for digital Tourette syndrome. However, we do know that digital Tourette's, term I introduced here, seems to be a real thing. It seemed to have significantly increased during COVID-19 because of isolation and other factors. Further, people behave that way, and it could be a continuous problem. The treatment would be not to keep watching the same kind of a TikTok or social media to reduce exposure. And a lot of times the brain can go back to what is considered normal activity. I believe it demonstrates how flexible a brain is and how sensitive it is to social media. It is very important to get social media under control. I'm not anti-tech. I love technology. However, we have a lot of people who are suffering with digital toxicity right now or brain rot. Brain rot was a term that was introduced in the 90s where people were playing games for a long time, 12 hours, 24 hours, and they came out of the game being confused or they had brain fog. It was more of a joke. It's no longer a joke because the more people are exposed to social media, the more problems they have, such as significant or excessive use of social media prior to sleep seems to be associated with suicide risk. It's associated with inflammation. There have been a few MRI studies showing shrinking of the brain in various parts of the brain with excessive use. The easiest way to think, from my perspective, of social media, it's a dose-dependent problem, meaning the more you use it, the more damage or problems there will be. Very similar to UV light. Low dose UV light produces vitamin D. High dose UV light produces cancer. The same seems to apply here. So what I want to talk about is a couple of ways to combat social media contagion or digital toxicity. One of them, one of the most effective and very inexpensive way is to convert the phone into gray function. The reason gray function works is due to dopamine reward for seeing color. Human beings seems to be very sensitive to various color as very stimulating, and that produces dopamine and it keeps people hooked. So let me show you how to do that. It's extremely simple. You can look it up yourself, but I will show you how it's done. So if you go to settings, then we go accessibility. Then we scroll down to Let's cut out this posing. Okay. Accessibility. Okay. We go to accessibility. Then we go to display and size right here. Display and size. Display and size. Then we scroll down to color filters. And this is what it looks like. And then color filters, right now it's off. So we've got a color filters, grayscale. They could see we're in grayscale and all the pencils are in gray. So this is what my cell looks like after this was enabled. It's less interesting, for sure, but it's actually a very good thing. That's one thing I recommend. There are 17 other things that can be done at no cost for the cell phone. The other thing that's really important is getting sleep in the age of cell phones. A lot of people are sleeping poorly with cell phones. That happens because at night, when somebody looks at the cell phone, it reduces melatonin. Melatonin is a natural hormone that's produced in the pineal gland, which makes you go to sleep. Melatonin secretion is reduced by light. So when somebody's looking at the phone, that gets reduced. Thus, you don't get as sleepy. Further, you're getting stimulated. Every time you see either outrage or somebody didn't say something the right way or whatever, it produces fight and flight activation that keeps you awake. Further, you're thinking about what you're reading, you can't sleep. When you don't sleep, it increases inflammation in the body. The body gets inflamed, the brain starts to swell up. That leads to depression and muscle loss. All of that has been at least suggested. It may not be proven, but it certainly has been described. So my suggestion as far as improvement of sleep is no phones in a bedroom for any reason. If you're an emergency worker or things like that, or a newscaster, what you need to do is to have very limited number of people who can have access to you if you set private time on the phone. The only people allowed to call me is my son, my wife, as well as my answering service. Nobody else get that. So you don't need to be informed of the latest sale or things like that. So the number one excuse for people not to remove the cell phone from bedroom is that they use that as an alarm clock. Turns out there is an easy solution for that. It's called the analog clock. Let me demonstrate this is our branded company right to disconnect. We'll talk about that in a second. But this clock is analog clock. You have the handles, there's no digit inside. So I have talked to a few Gen Zs. Turns out they did not know how to use this type of clock. So let me show you. This is an instructional manual how to use. God damn it. Okay, let's. Oh. Okay. Nice. Live. I don't want live.